You know that feeling when someone tells you to just think positive? Yes, someone popped into your head right now. And they tell you to just think positive while your whole world seems to be crashing down around you. What happens? Yeah, that rage kind of bubbles up inside you. And if you know what I'm talking about, then good. That rage is your soul refusing to be silenced. Because here's what no one is telling you about toxic positivity and emotional suppression. It's not just useless, it's literally killing you. And I've got the science to prove it.
Your Success DNA podcast. Your success is in your DNA.
What is up? What is up? What the hell is up, my fellow success seekers? Welcome back to another episode of Your Success DNA, that podcast for my aspiring, I want to do better guys and gals out there, aspiring entrepreneurs, and even those 9-to-5 escapees out there. Each episode delivers mindset shifts, habit upgrades, and a little dose of rebellion, because you know we're all a little different, right? All designed to help you break free from convention so that you can build not just a business, but maybe a life aligned with your version of success. And if you know someone who dreams of ditching the grind but still finds a little time for some personal development and a little self-help out there, you might want to go ahead and forward this episode to them. Okay, so as I kind of alluded to, we're going to be talking about the toxic truth about the good vibes only crowd out there and why your brain tends to rebel against forced positivity. Here's the 3 things I want you to come away with today. First, we're diving into the neuroscience nightmare of emotional suppression. Why trying to think your way out of negative emotions literally rewires your brain for failure and increases your risk of death by 35%. We're talking amygdala hijacking, MRI evidence, and why researchers from Stanford and Harvard agree that suppression is one of the most dangerous emotional regulation strategies that you could be using. Second, I'm going to be revealing the white bear experiment, Daniel Wegner's landmark research that proves why don't think about it is about the worst advice you've ever received. If you're still receiving it, then you're going to want to hear me out here, and how this discovery from 1863 Dostoevsky all the way to Wegner's 1987 lab explains why you can't stop obsessing over what's actually bothering you. Psychologists call this rumination. And I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago. And toxic positivity is turbocharging your rumination. And third, as if all that wasn't enough, we're exploring tragic optimism. This is Viktor Frankl's Holocaust survivor's secret to holding hope and suffering simultaneously, and why this approach builds real resilience instead of Instagram-worthy fake strength. So let's start with the truth that's going to make a lot of the self-help industrial complex very, very uncomfortable. Good vibes isn't just bad advice. It's emotional violence disguised as wellness. And I want you to hear me clearly on this. I'm not talking about genuine optimism, not talking about genuine gratitude or hope or real resilience, because those are real and those are very, very powerful tools, and they have decades of research behind them. What I'm talking about is something far more insidious. Toxic positivity, the cultural cancer that's quietly embedding itself into our workplace, into our social media feeds, and even into the way we raise our kids. Yeah, okay? And if you've ever felt guilty for feeling sad, for feeling anxious, or feeling angry or frustrated, if you've ever been told to just look on the bright side when your entire world is crumbling down around your shoulders, you've experienced emotional suppression firsthand, and it's making you miserable in ways you probably did not even realize. Let's talk about Tracy here for a moment, corporate director I coached not too far back. Brilliant woman, climbing the corporate ladder, checking all the boxes, but she came to me completely burned out. Anxieties through the roof, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. I don't understand, she told me. I practice gratitude every morning. I only follow positive accounts on my social media feeds. I never complain about work. I'm doing everything right, but I feel like I'm dying inside. And that's when I told her about the twisted history of how we all got here. You see, this didn't happen overnight, ladies and gentlemen. The roots of the positive thinking movement go all the way back to 1945. Right after World War II ended, a group of psychologists began shifting their focus. Instead of helping people work through negative feelings, they started encouraging people to simply think in more positive ways as a way to dispel anxiety, to dispel anger and depression. On the surface, let's be honest, that sounds reasonable, right? Yeah, some of you are nodding, okay. But it planted this poisonous seed at the same time. Then, 1954 rolls around. Abraham Maslow coined the term positive psychology in his book, Motivation and Personality. Now, to be clear, positive psychology as a legitimate field of scientific study is not the problem. Don't get me wrong. Don't come at me with the hate in the comments. When Martin Stegman launched the modern positive psychology movement in 1998, he was explicitly distinguishing his rigorous, evidence-based work from the kind of simplistic positive thinking that toxic positivity represents. Okay? So we're talking about two different roads here. The problem is what happened when that idea got stripped out of its nuance and turned into bumper stickers and Instagram captions and motivational posters. Hang in there, baby, right? By 2011, the term toxic positivity finally appeared in academic literature. Yeah, it took that long. Researchers had given a name to what millions of people were already experiencing. Research usually follows the action happening. Otherwise, there's nothing to research, right? But here's what they found. The research from 2024 established that toxic positivity operates through two dimensions. The first is the emotional suppression conformity. All three words together, not emotional suppression or just conformity. It's emotional suppression conformity. The social pressure to hide what you're actually feeling. The second is future optimism biased. Yeah, the insistence that things will just work out without processing what's actually happened or happening right now. Both are measurable, both are harmful, and both, let's be honest, are everywhere. Then I introduced Stacy to something called the white bear experiment. Way back in 1863, Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky, I hope I didn't tear that name up, wrote something strange. Try to pose for yourself a task, not to think of a polar bear, and you will see that that cursed thing will come to mind every minute. More than a century later, Harvard psychologist Daniel Wegner decided to test this in the lab. He asked participants to verbalize their thoughts for 5 minutes while actively trying not to think of a white bear, of the polar bear. And if that white bear came to mind, they had to ring a bell. Despite explicit instructions to avoid it, participants thought of a white bear more than once per minute on average. Yeah, trying not to think about something made them think about it more. Stacy's eyes went a little bit wide at this moment. That's exactly what happens with me and my anxiety. The harder I try to be positive, the worse it seems to get. Exactly. Bing, 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 right? Winner, winner, chicken dinner here. Because Wegner discovered what's called the ironic process theory. Your brain deploys two simultaneous processes when you try to suppress a thought. The operating process uses mental energy to push the thought away, but the monitoring process acts like a background scanner, right? Constantly checking whether the unwanted thought has surfaced. But here's the kicker. The monitoring process keeps the thought alive and right at the front of your mind when you're stressed, when you're tired, and when you're mentally stretched to the very end, right? Which probably describes most of us out there. Most of us driven people, most of the time, we're stressed and tired and stretched thin. The operating process weakens because we don't have the cognitive resources to sustain it. But the monitoring process keeps right on a chugging, right? You got to keep scanning. I got to keep myself safe. So the very thought you're trying to suppress ends up becoming even louder under pressure. Psychologists call this cycle rumination, and it's one of the strongest predictors of depression and anxiety disorders that they've ever identified. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Wegner did find one thing that helped. In a follow-up study, his team asked participants to think of a red Volkswagen instead of the white bear, giving people something specific and concrete to redirect their attention to actually worked. This is essentially what mindfulness meditation teaches us, not through suppression, but through deliberate thought, redirection, and acceptance. Neuroscientists at UCLA call this effect labeling. The act of naming what you're feeling actually reduces amygdala activation. Putting words to emotions quite literally calms your nervous system at a biological level. So, all that said, go ahead and replace white bear with the anxiety you have about your career. Replace it with grief. Replace it with the fear that you're not good enough. When you try to think positively and push your feelings down, what ACT therapists call experiential avoidance, you're not solving anything. You're actually activating the exact mechanisms that's going to make them louder. Yeah, and it gets worse. There's a social cognition effect that no one's even talking about, except for me right now. There may be others out there, but I haven't heard them. Research shows that suppression increases psychological stress responses, not just in the person suppressing them, but the people around them. Yeah, your partner, your kids, your colleagues, your friends. They sense something is off and that elevates their stress level as well. Emotional suppression turns out to be contagious, ladies and gentlemen, and contagious in the worst way. All right, so here's a step-by-step breakdown of what's actually happening in your brain and your body when you suppress emotions and what you should do instead. All right, step one, let's understand the neuroscience real quick, shall we? Using functional MRI scans, researchers found that when you consciously suppress your emotions, activity in your amygdala, that's your brain's emotional processing center, decreases. Sounds good, right? Wrong.
Your Success DNA podcast. Your success is in your DNA.
Here's what else is happening. Both conscious and unconscious emotional suppression reduces functional connectivity in the brain regions that help us encode emotional memories. What does that mean? Okay, your brain is literally changing how it processes and stores the experience. Here's a top-down inhibitory control signal from the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex targeting both the hippocampus and the amygdala. A lot of big words there, and my tongue just stumbled over a couple of them. Effectively, you're not just dampening the emotion, you're literally disrupting the entire memory and emotional processing system in your noggin. Yeah, James Gross at Stanford University, one of the most cited emotional regulation researchers in the world, has spent decades proving that suppression is fundamentally different from healthier strategies like reappraisal. Reappraisal is reframing how you think about a situation. It decreases both the experience and the expression of negative emotion with no impact on memory. What? Yeah, suppression, it might reduce the outward expression of your emotion, but it fails to decrease the actual emotional experience and it impairs your memory. Yeah, you feel me? You're getting this? Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is built on reappraisal as its core mechanism, which is precisely why it has such strong evidence base compared to just telling someone to stay positive. Okay? You don't feel better. You just look fine while you're falling apart on the inside. And on top of all of that, you're starting to forget things. Maybe things you need to remember, okay? Step two, let's recognize the physical costs here. A landmark study followed 729 folks over 12 years, tracking deaths from all causes. People who scored in the 75th percentile of emotional suppression had a 35% higher risk of dying from any cause during the study period. Earlier epidemiological evidence from the Yugoslavian cohort study found that suppression-prone personality styles predicted 10-year all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease mortality, and cancer deaths. They died faster. I'm just saying, the mechanism is kind of straightforward. Chronic emotional suppression keeps your stress response system activated. It just steps on the gas for you. The cortisol, the adrenaline, and the inflammatory markers, they don't shut off. According to the Mayo Clinic, this chronic activation disrupts every system in your body. Heart disease, hypertension, depression, digestive problems, immune dysfunction, sleep disruption, headaches, muscle tension. The list goes on. Your body is keeping score, even though your Instagram says everything is fine. You feel me? Okay. Step number 3, let's understand the shame spiral. Well, I'm going to lose a couple people right here, but that's okay. You know me, I'm going to pull any punches. Because here is the most insidious part. Toxic positivity creates shame. Yeah. Cancel culture magnified right there. Okay. When you are told that the solution to your pain is to simply think positive and you still can't do it, you don't come to the conclusion that the advice is bad. You end up coming to the conclusion that you are broken. Yeah. What the hell? Research from Brené Brown confirmed that emotional suppression drives higher levels of anxiety, depression, and burnout, in part because of exactly this shame spiral. A JED Foundation survey found that 43% of college students reported their mental health being worse than ever, with 82% experiencing anxiety in the past month. Research from Brock University found that for young perfectionists, the positive vibes only culture didn't help them cope at all. Instead, it increased their stress and their self-criticism. These young people come to see sadness, anxiety, anger, and frustration not just as difficult emotions, but as personal failures. What? Yeah, some researchers even studied alexithymia, the clinical term for difficulty identifying and describing your own emotions. And the evidence suggests that cultures of suppression actively train people towards that condition. You become emotionally illiterate about your own inner world, your life, your heart, your feelings. Yeah. Okay? You with me? Step 4. Let's apply some research-backed alternative here. All right, so now I've given you all the doom and gloom. Here's where we get a little bit hopeful. A series of landmark studies led by Brett Ford at the University of Toronto examined what happens when people habitually just accept their mental experiences rather than stand there and judge them. Study 1 included over 1,000 participants. Study 2 brought 156 people into the lab, and Study 3 followed 222 participants over the course of 6 months. The findings held consistent across all 3 studies, even though they were done differently. People who habitually accept their emotional experiences, including the negative ones, well, let's lean into that, reported greater psychological health in as little as 6 months later. This held true regardless of gender, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status. These people were simply less likely to respond negatively when stress hit them. And here's the paradox that makes this so damn powerful. Accepting negative experiences was associated with lower negative emotion overall. Yeah, let that one sink in for a moment. When you stop freaking fighting your difficult feelings, when you stop judging yourself for even having them, they will actually fade away faster and cause less distress in your world. Acceptance is especially effective when you're under high stress, which is precisely when we're most tempted to slap on a smile and try to push through them, isn't it? Go ahead. You know you're one of those folks. Yeah, okay, raise your hand. No problem. Step 5. Practice emotional agility. Yeah. Okay. Now we don't need you to, get into any leaning poses or anything to stretch your muscles, but hear me out. Dr. Susan David of Harvard Medical School, whose work was named a Management Idea of the Year by Harvard Business Review, she developed what she calls emotional agility. And her perspective is shaped by something a little bit profound. I mean, she grew up in apartheid in South Africa, where she saw firsthand how denying the reality of the situation can in fact carry destructive power over an entire country. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out apartheid in South Africa in your history. Okay. But here's her 4-step process, and it's backed by over 1,000 randomized controlled trials. First, show up. Okay. So many of us have a problem with this. Show up. Face your thoughts and emotions with curiosity instead of avoidance. When that anxiety hits, instead of thinking, I shouldn't feel this way, right? Go ahead and try thinking something like this. Oh, this is interesting. I wonder what this anxiety is trying to tell me, right? It's a signal, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just saying. Second, step out. Detach from your emotions just enough to observe them without being consumed by them. You are not your emotions. You are the observer of your emotions. This is what dialectical behaviors therapy, DBT, calls mindful observation of emotional experience. You're seeing the emotion without becoming the emotion. Third, walk your why. Take a moment, reconnect with your core values to guide your behavior. That frustration at work might be telling you that you value autonomy. That sadness after a relationship fades away might be telling you you value connection. When you push aside difficult emotions in the service of forced positivity, you also push aside what those emotions are teaching us about our innermost values, right? There's a lesson there to be learned. And then fourth, move on. I know, right? Make small, deliberate changes that align with who you want to be. Not based on suppressing what you feel, but based on honoring what those feelings are teaching you about your deeply held values. And in step 6, this is called practice strategic optimism. This comes from Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor I mentioned earlier, and he's the founder of logotherapy. He understood something most people miss. He called it tragic optimism. Unfortunately, I've been through a level of this. Of course, I wasn't a Holocaust survivor. The death of an 18-month-old daughter kind of teaches you tragic optimism. And this is the ability to maintain hope and find meaning while fully acknowledging the reality of suffering. You're not denying the pain. You're not performing happiness, but you're holding both truths out there in front of you at the same time because they're both there. Your negative emotions are not obstacles. They're signposts. And when you suppress them, you lose the signal. You lose the data. You lose your compass, and you get lost on the winding path that is life. And if this is hitting you right where you live, good. And if you're tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not, I want to get you on my newsletter, the Unleash Your Success DNA is for my aspiring folks out there who want to do better, but who are done with surface level advice and are ready for the real work of transformation. Each issue continues to deliver mindset shifts and habit upgrades, and still mixed with my little dose of rebellion, helping you break free from convention so that you can build a life aligned with your version of success. No toxic positivity, no fake inspiration, just truth I think that works. Go ahead and check it out at yoursuccessdna.com. Okay, now let's step back here for a moment and answer the question of why this matters at a much larger scale. Because we're living through what I'm going to call the great emotional suppression, right? An entire generation, maybe two, have been taught that negative emotions are in fact personal failures instead of valuable information. Dr. Susan David, she put it bluntly. There is no research supporting the idea that false positivity, which is a denial of our experience, is helpful to us as human beings. None, nada, zip, zero, not a single study, yet we keep freaking doing it. We keep telling people things could be worse. We keep posting positive vibes only. We keep saying everything happens for a reason to someone who just lost their job or a relationship or, like me, a loved one. This isn't just about individual wellness. This is about reclaiming your humanity in a world that profits from our emotional numbness. We've created a culture where authenticity seems somehow revolutionary, and feeling your feelings becomes an act of rebellion. What? What's up with that? The people who truly thrive aren't the ones who never feel pain. They're the ones who learn to feel it fully, understand what it's telling them, and then move forward with that new clarity. So here is your whispered wisdom for this week. The next time you catch yourself saying, I shouldn't feel this way, or I need to stay positive, pause and ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to teach me about what it is I value? Don't judge it. Don't fix it. Don't know. Just listen to it. Because here's what I know after decades of looking around and studying human behavior and working with so many amazing people across all walks of life. You don't need to be positive all the damn time, but you do need to be honest. You do need to be present. And most importantly, you do need to stop treating your difficult emotions like enemies and start treating them like messengers. That's not toxic positivity. That, my friend, is real strength. That's emotional agility. And that's how you build a life that's actually worth living instead of just looking good on social media. Remember, your emotions, all of them, are data. They're telling you something important about who you really are and what you really value. The world doesn't need yet another person pretending everything is fine, especially not for the sake of an Instagram feed. It needs you, the real you. Unedited, truly authentic, and 100% emotionally intelligent. Stop suppressing, start listening. Stop performing happiness, and start building real resilience. Think successfully and take action.
Thanks for listening to Your Success DNA podcast. Whether you're starting out or you're a seasoned entrepreneur, we have the tools and inspiration that you need to take your life to the next level. So stay tuned for more game-changing advice in our upcoming episodes. And hey, before you go, a quick reminder to check out our past episodes of Your Success DNA for more inspiring stories and practical advice. And if you've loved what you heard, leave us a review and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. Let's all level up our lives together, shall we? Remember, your success is in your DNA.